everyone. We're having an abortion debate tonight, and we're starting right now. Welcome. I'm your guest host, Praise, sitting in for the great James Coons. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have Tjump and Steven teamed up against Skylar and Kay on the topic of abortion. Would you like to introduce yourselves before we get started? We'll go with Skylar and Kay, then Tjump and Steven. So go ahead, Skylar and Kay, if you want to give brief introductions about your channel, what you're up to, and yeah, we'll go to the next slide after that. Mute. Okay, thank you, and we're going to hand it off to Tjump and Steven.
Yeah, no audio.
Okay,
Muted, people are saying.
Okay, so I guess if you can just do it like a really quick. There's sound. There we go. So just do like a quick 10-second one because, or we can just jump right into. I mean, does everyone care about the introductions, or we can just go to the next part? It's up to you guys.
Let's go to the next part.
I'm just here just for raw sex appeal anyway, so.
So just to let you know, tonight's format, we have 10-minute openings, then we'll have an hour open discussion, moderate discussion if need be, and then 30 minutes QA. To let everyone in the audience know, we have debates coming up on science, politics, and religion. If you'd like to have reminders on controversial debates we have coming up, hit that subscribe and like button. We want you to feel welcome here no matter what your views are. So with that, let's kick it over to Tjump and Steven for their opening statements. The floor is yours.
Sure. So my position is that killing anyone is always wrong ever under any circumstances. And I think that even if we grant that a fetus is a living being, if it has consciousness, then it has moral value and killing it is always wrong, then it's going to be wrong to kill it. But it's also wrong to force a woman to have someone else in her body without her consent, or a man in that case too. So if forcing a person to use their body for someone else's benefit without their consent is also immoral, in which case you are justified in removing that person who is there without your consent from your body. So much like the case of self-defense, if someone else has entered your body or has been placed there without your consent, you have a moral right to remove that person from your body because it is your property, your body. And so it's immoral to force someone to contain another person without their consent. Therefore, it is morally justified to support abortion for the exact same reasons it's morally justified to support self-defense. So even if it is the case that the baby is fully human and fully conscious, it wouldn't justify allowing that person who is in the other person's body to stay there without the consent of the body of the host. And so it is justified to abort other human beings if they're occupying someone else's body without their consent. And I will conclude there.
All right. Thanks, Tjump. Yeah, so I totally agree with what Thomas said. Obviously, we're on the same team, but also because of like the kind of specifics that he said about that like it is always wrong to murder a child if they are like or any conscious being. I do also kind of lean heavily on the violinist argument. I think it's kind of most known by. I'm sure that's going to come up in the open exchange. There is a noticeable kind of talking point or talking phrase that people will say, oh, that like people have sex for reproduction. Well, I'm sure that people did in the very, very like earliest humans, that yes, that we did have sex for that it was about survival and about kind of, you know, all of that thing.
Sorry to interrupt. The pictures are gone, so they can't see anybody on the screen.
Oh yeah. I'm only after noticing that now actually as well.
It looks like it's going to me. Let's see here. It should be good.
It's good now. It's just after popping back up there.
Okay.
At least on my end.
Yeah, I have no idea why it does that.
Now I can't remember where the fuck I was. Oh yeah. It's a thing that people say, oh, that like it's for reproduction, and in, you know, the earliest humans it was because it was about survival and stuff like this. But much like in the way that like eating used to only be when you were starving, that our attitudes towards eating has changed and has, one might say, evolved over time. Whereas now we eat because we're bored or because we're peckish or because it's time to eat, etc., etc., etc. And I think that the same can be said for why people have sex. I have never had sex with the goal being reproduction. It has happened once and it didn't exactly end well, but that's a story for a different day. But I mean, like, people have sex for a lot of different reasons. People have sex because they're bored, because they won a bet, because they lost a bet, because they're waiting for the dominoes guy, because, you know, revenge. There's a lot of reasons why people have sex, and I genuinely don't think that reproduction is one of it. It's obviously one for a lot of people, but it's not for everybody. It's kind of wafted aside sometimes as being, you know, the bodily autonomy argument and stuff like this. But there's been a lot of court cases in the United States that have won based on the grounds of bodily autonomy. So clearly it means something. This is obviously Roe v. Wade. That's the biggest one. That's the one that everybody knows about. There is one for Planned Parenthood versus Casey, and Washington versus Glucksberg, just to name a few. So, I mean, clearly these laws mean something. There is 6 states. There's Mississippi, Ohio, Georgia, Missouri, Kentucky, and Louisiana that have introduced abortion laws that have like effectively banned it after 6 weeks, and there is no exceptions to that, to those laws. If I was to kind of ask everybody on the panel, obviously it's a rhetorical question, I know the answer. If I was to ask everybody in the live chat as well, what people think the youngest person to ever give birth was, you might be kind of thinking something along the lines of, like, you know, a very young teenager, if not a preteen. Actually, no, that's not the case. The youngest person to ever give birth, her name was Lena Marcella Medina. She was born in 1933, and she somehow successfully gave birth at 5 years, 7 months, and 21 days old. Now, why do I bring this up? If she was to be born in any of the states that I just brought up, that state would force a child to give birth. Now, I'm not saying this as any sort of a thing. I am in absolutely no way, shape, or form levying the accusation against Kay or against Skylar that they would be in favor of this happening. However, what I am saying is their position enacted into law results in just this. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you for your opening. So you had about 4 minutes to spare, so that was a short opening, but we can add it to question and answers, or if you have a concluding remark, we can add to that, whatever you guys want. So now we'll kick it over to the pro-life side, Skylar and Kay. So when you guys want to go ahead and start, I'll start the timer in your first word.
Yes. First, I want to start by letting everyone know that my arguments tonight aren't geared towards medically necessary abortions, because I don't argue against those. So I do have some nuance to my position. Well, let me start by saying that anyone who you have ever loved is here because their mother chose life. Life grants one the possibility of experiencing things like love, joy, sadness, beauty, and tragedy. You get what the universe hands you. We must not end life in order to feel safe. In life, safety is not guaranteed nor promised. We cannot let our fear of what the future brings write our destiny. Oftentimes, the things we fear about our future don't manifest themselves in the reality that we imagined. But when we let fear dictate our future, we allow ourselves to do things we never thought we'd do. Life is hard and cruel, especially for women. We live in a world where women are treated as male property and find themselves the focus point of male sexual desire. This is an example of devaluing of human life. Women are not property, nor are they sexual objects. This devaluing of life manifests itself throughout history in many ways. We must recognize that when we choose to measure the value of a human life, or how we choose to measure the value of human life, has consequences. Slavery is a prime example of the devaluation of human life. Slaves were looked at as inferior, therefore having less value to their master. In modern history, Nazi Germany committed acts of genocide on the Jewish people. Their Jewish lives had no value to them. What we value defines our hearts, and I choose to value life and the potential that it brings. Even in the most horrific of places, with no hope for any type of brighter future, 2 Jewish women chose life in Nazi concentration camps. One of the babies were born underweight, and the mother hid her for an entire month before the Allied forces arrived and liberated that camp. Life finds a way. I ask the question, what do you value? We live in a world that does not value human life. We have abundances of wealth, yet we choose to spend it on expensive machines of war. For what? To protect life and liberty? We can afford it. It's our hearts that need changing. We have to start valuing all human life if we want to end abortion. We must recognize how we justify our actions and remember how others have justified theirs. In the end, you are left to your own moral conscience. Do you value life more than someone's man-made right to bodily autonomy? I choose life. And I'll end with a quote from Fred Rogers. Fame is a 4-letter word. And like tape or Zoom or face or pain or life or love, what ultimately matters is what we do with it. And I say that how we choose to value life and how we choose a perspective on this world will make the difference that we need. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to echo a lot of what Skylar said. I think he said a lot of things very beautifully. I'm not just a pro-life activist. I'm what we call a consistent life ethic activist. So I believe that human life is valuable from the beginning of natural life to natural death. And I am opposed to anything that cuts life short for human beings, because I believe that the right to life is an inalienable right that all humans have. I think that as a society and just as a species as a whole, things like abortion is kind of it kind of sheds a light on where we are as a species. I see it as a travesty, and I see it as society's grotesquely failing women and not giving them a better option than abortion. Just like my partner said, life is hard, and it's particularly hard for women. And I don't diminish the hardships that women go through whenever they are faced with an unplanned pregnancy. I just come from the position that I believe there are so many other things that we can do to make the world a better place for women, to make society a more accepting place for women, and a better place to bring children that were conceived in less than pleasant circumstances and unplanned circumstances into this world. So that's the position that I come from whenever discussing pro-life activism and pro-choice activism. I think there's a lot of common ground that pro-life people and pro-choice people can meet on to genuinely make this world a better place for women in particular, because it is it's rough for us out there, and unplanned pregnancy and the circumstances surrounding a lot of unplanned pregnancies is just one of the many, many hardships that women are having to face. And as a pro-life activist, I think that is our job as pro-life activists in our pro-life movement to make the world a better place for women so that they don't feel the need to have abortions in the first place. And I will leave my opening statement at that so that we can get into dialogue.
Awesome. Thank you guys for your opening statements. We're going to switch gears and go into the open discussion now for about an hour, within somewhere around there. And we'll have to step in and moderate if any over talking, ad hominems, and things like that. But I don't think we're going to have to descend into that. But the floor is yours, guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I'd like to start. So, Kay, you said that essentially making women slaves and taking away their freedom to choose abortion would somehow make their lives better. It would improve lives of women. Is that what you said?
Well, no, I don't see pregnancy as slavery. I think that whenever you look at abortion statistics, and overwhelmingly women are choosing abortions because of socioeconomic and outside reasoning, that whenever we're talking about lowering abortion rates, there are so many more things that we can be doing. I don't think that this is a conversation of we just need to make abortion illegal and leave it at that. But overwhelmingly, whenever women are choosing to have abortions, even whenever they don't particularly want to, that wouldn't be their first choice if they didn't have all of these outside other reasons to do so. I think that there are many ways that we can improve the lives of women so that they don't feel the need to go and get abortions in the first place.
Yeah, but that wasn't quite what I asked. So we can do all of those things you just said and still give women the option to get abortions. So specifically taking away their freedom of choice to be able to choose abortion, you're saying taking away that freedom, hence making them a slave in some respect, would be better for them, would make their lives better by taking away one of their freedoms?
Well, I don't see killing other human beings as a freedom. I mean, we don't liberate one group of people by enslaving another group of people and saying that a fetus doesn't have the right to life, even though they did not choose to come into existence in the first place, is just putting our enslavement on another group of people. That's not liberation.
Well, if another group of people is trying to harm you or do significant physical damage to your body, it seems like you do have the right to kill them in self-defense.
But a fetus isn't trying to harm you. Again, they made no conscious choice to come into existence in the first place, and they make no conscious choice to where their location is or how their development is. It's just biological.
Sure, but choice doesn't make a difference in this case. Like, you can kill someone in self-defense if they're having an epileptic seizure and charging at you and there's nothing else you can do to stop them. There are many police cases of that exact thing happening. So the mens rea of the intention of the child makes no difference to the fact that they will cause a significant physical harm to the body. And so it is justified to remove them in self-defense. So I'm not sure why you're bringing up the intention.
Yeah, but this is like arguing that it's like arguing you gave the bad guy the gun, and now like you're giving the bad guy the choice of self-defense in a sense. Like you chose to have the baby, right? We have mechanisms. Yes, I know how to make babies, and I know that it's not that easy necessarily to have a baby. And if you have people wearing protection, both being people wearing protection, at least taking proper steps here. Like, this isn't a self-defense case. This isn't like the baby's not personally trying to harm you or kill you. And if it's that type of thing where you're in such danger, right? And I agree with medically necessary abortions. But if you're in a situation where like a pregnancy could kill you, you should probably be taking more steps than getting pregnant here.
Right.
There's a lot of steps there.
So we agree about the medically necessary thing. That's not what we're talking about here. But condoms don't always work. Birth protection doesn't always work. So saying that because they work majority of the time, therefore everyone who happens to get pregnant is responsible is just false. Like, consent to sex is not consent to pregnancy. Those are clearly two different things. And saying they are is a naturalistic fallacy, or an appeal to nature. I forget which one it is, but it's saying that, well, because your nature designed you to have babies, therefore, if you take this action that nature deems will cause you to get pregnant, therefore you're responsible for nature the way it designed you.
If I take drugs, I'm responsible for the high I get off of them. Like, if I create any action that I commit, I'm responsible for the action that I commit.
Yeah, but you're not responsible for the consequences of nature. So, like, if you could take drugs and have it not like make you addicted,
that particular nature, it is. I'm the one controlling that specific aspect of nature.
You're not controlling the consequence.
Oh, absolutely. I'm the one sticking my penis into somebody and allowing it to go through the acts of nature. Absolutely.
Skylar, you don't
My
control nature.
choice.
You don't control
You're
nature.
misunderstanding how I'm using the word nature. I'm talking about nature is how my body functions, right? The orgasm
You're not
functions.
addressing my in a way you have no say in, and because your body was determined to be this way without your consent, that you're not responsible for the way that nature deems your body is going to produce other
In
people.
this specific thing we're talking about, you are.
No, that's
Yes.
literally
If you
an
have,
appeal to
let me
nature
ask you,
policy.
can someone get pregnant if they don't have sex, Tom?
Technically, yes.
Technically, yes, but you know what I mean. No, they can't. They're not going. You can, unless you go and actually do it in a lab or go and actually have it injected into you. You're not going. If you don't have sex, you're not going to get pregnant.
What does this have
You
to do
have
with
to
the point?
choose to get pregnant.
What does this have to do with the point? So,
Because the
I
overall
choose,
point is you're trying to act like this is like some part of nature that can't be stopped,
no,
right? And
that's
therefore
not-
it's
that's not the
defensible
point.
for you
Hold
to
on,
take the
hold
life
on.
of
Let
the child.
T-Jump finish this point. Go ahead, T-Jump.
So,
Sure.
so this has nothing to do with the ability for it to be stopped. Like, for example, if we imagine a universe where if every time someone eats a cheeseburger, they have a chance of getting pregnant, does that mean that they're responsible for the pregnancy because they ate a cheeseburger? Well, no.
Yes. Yes, you don't eat
No.
cheeseburgers if you don't want to get pregnant in a world where you eat cheeseburgers and get
That's-
pregnant.
Skylar, that's called an appeal to nature fallacy. We know why that's
No,
wrong.
no, no. It's called reality. Because if you
Yeah.
don't want to get pregnant from eating cheeseburgers, don't eat cheeseburgers.
That's called an appeal to nature fallacy. So saying that something
Go
is
ahead, explain.
you're obligated by something because of something nature did that you have no say in, and that it's therefore right or has
No,
some
no,
kind of
your
obligation.
nature didn't do that. You did that.
No,
you
no,
had
Skylar,
sex.
Skylar.
No,
Did I make my
you are
body?
not distinguishing nature from human will and human desire.
That's not what an appeal to nature is, Skylar. So an appeal to nature.
You're
is to
not,
say
I don't
something-
understand what it is, because you're not really articulating how
Okay.
I'm making the fallacy. Go ahead.
So an appeal to nature fallacy is to say something is good or right or has some obligation because it's the way nature is. So like it is the way nature is that a human body will reproduce if a sperm and an egg come in contact. And
Are you saying that a human mind is nature? That a human's mind decisions is part of nature?
yes, but that's not relevant to the point.
So then what is the, just saying, well, if you're just saying that a human's decisions is nature, then everything is nature in the context of what you're saying.
Everything is nature, but that's not relevant.
And this is
to the
irrelevant.
point.
And just
No,
saying that because
Skylar,
it's
Skylar,
nature, it's natural.
Skylar, so to say that just because something is natural, therefore it's good, is an appeal to nature fallacy. Now, something
I'm
can
not
be
saying
natural.
just because it's natural, it's good.
Okay, well, that seems like what you're saying. You're saying that
No,
just
I'm
because-
no, I'm saying that human beings have the decision to have sex and have babies.
Okay,
That's
but
what I'm saying.
Okay, but that doesn't. So my point is that biology, nature makes people sexually reproduce in a certain way that we didn't consent in. That's nature. So nature did something.
Yes, the biological reproduction, the actual way we reproduce is nature. Go ahead.
So we can't be obligated to abide by that just because it's natural, because if that's the only reason we're obligated to abide by it, that would be an appeal to nature fallacy. So
No. You're not making the distinction between like how we naturally biologically function, like how we reproduce, and then the ability that we have to choose whether we want to reproduce. Right? I don't do things that endanger my life, like not wearing a seatbelt in the car, because then I open the opportunity for me to die in a car crash. Just like you choose the opportunity to have sex. You don't have to have sex with somebody.
Skylar, so when I choose to have cigarettes and get cancer, we give people chemo to kill the cancer.
You chose to smoke cigarettes, which led to cancer.
Skylar, hold on. So
repercussions.
Skylar, hold
Yeah,
on.
hold
So
on. Let T-Jump finish this point. Go ahead, T-Jump.
when I choose to take drugs and get addicted, we send them to therapy. When I choose to get in a car wreck, you send them to a doctor. The choices you make don't make you obligated to live with the consequences because you didn't choose the consequences. If you choose the consequences, yes, you're obligated to the consequences. But if you didn't, if they're a consequence of nature which you didn't consent to, you're not obligated to live with.
Anything. We're not obligated to anything. We choose our obligations, right? Funny looks don't answer the question, Tom. Like if you would respond, we don't. You're saying there's some kind of obligation. The obligation is up to us. We make our own obligations.
If you're saying abortion is wrong, that's an obligation. You are obligated to carry the child. It's just synonymous use of the term. I'm not saying there's an objective one here.
I'm saying that terminating life when there's an opportunity to give it up for adoption is wrong.
That's called
you're choosing death over life.
That's
when
called
there's other options, and you've already agreed. Tom, follow the point here, right? So you agree that killing baby or killing fetuses is wrong, right? A woman has a choice to either give up the baby for adoption, which doesn't kill a fetus, which is the moral thing to do, or not do it. Which one is the more moral thing?
Giving up the baby is the more moral thing to do. Just like just like if someone's coming at you with a knife, the moral thing to do is to let them stab you.
Babies don't have knives. That's so ridiculous. That's such a ridiculous analogy.
Yes, that's exactly what I said. I said babies are.
And that would fall under medically necessary abortions, anyways.
No. So you're not understanding.
It's not a baby with a knife.
You're not understanding the analogy here. So, a pregnancy, what it does physically inside of the body, if you just imagine a human being, a doctor causing the same physical harm to a human's body and saying this evil doctor who's going to come and do to your body exactly what a baby would, would have the right to kill the doctor because the harm caused to your body is
babies aren't setting it human beings that can make choices. No, they're not the same. Adult humans and babies aren't the same thing.
Skylar, you're not understanding. So if a doctor,
you say I'm not understanding, but you're making analogies that aren't.
Yeah, it seems like we're coming into an impasse, you guys. So I wanted to
introduce.
I'd like to finish the analogy.
Yeah, I would like to get Kay and Steven involved in here a little bit. If they can get involved here, it'd be great.
I'd like to finish this analogy first. So if a human being, a fully grown human being, is going to do to your body what pregnancy does, there's no baby in this at all. If a doctor, a fully grown human being, is going to cause equal damage to a woman's body as a pregnancy would, the woman would be justified to kill the doctor, which means the damage caused by pregnancy is equivalent to great bodily harm, which is the legal criterion that justifies use of lethal force to self-defense. And it doesn't matter if the doctor is aware or epileptic or whatever.
Rare situations, rare situations. It's not the majority. Besides,
no, I'm talking about every single pregnancy, any pregnancy at all. The amount of damage done to the body qualifies as great bodily harm. Great bodily harm is.
So it's okay to kill fetuses, kill life because it harms the body in some way.
Yes.
So okay. All right. I mean, I just have a different view. I don't feel it's self-defense. I don't think you're protecting yourself against a baby that will be born. Right? You might have to suffer. I don't know what thing in life you would expect not to have physical suffering over, right? But that's how life works. Whether you're exercising, whether you're doing whatever, whether you're working a job, you do physical damage to your body over time, right? And if it's too much, I'm sorry that if it's too much that you get some physical damage, like I said, I gave the exception for medically necessary ones, right? So what you're talking about is situations where women can have adoptions, give the baby up, not have maximal harm, right? Maybe go through some harm of the body, but still choose to end the life because, hey, it's my right to do what I choose to do with it. Maybe somebody else wants to speak.
Yeah, I just wanted to say just like very, very quickly, I just kind of felt just like very, very awkward when we were talking about like drugs and getting addicted whilst I'm literally sitting here smoking a cigarette. But anyway, I just wanted to ask Kay, just because you had said to kind of pass it over to us, do you think that like anti-abortion laws work in the sense that they will like reduce the amount of abortions that are being done?
No, anti-abortion laws by themselves do not work, and we have statistics to prove this. And this is why my activism is the way that it is, because you can't just take something away without replacing it with something. You see in states where they have programs that offer low cost or free birth control, you see abortion rates plummet. Like, we need to do things on a social and even a legal level to help lower the abortion rates as low as we possibly can in order for anti-abortion laws to have even a chance of doing what the majority of pro-lifers think that they're going to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would kind of agree on the expanding education about sex. I fully agree with that. Where I was kind of going, though, I mean, like, just to kind of like about these anti-abortion laws, I mean, like, I kind of get that it's a little bit unique in my position because Roe v. Wade was passed in 1973. So, the chances that like everybody here and that the vast majority of the live chat, if they are in the US, have lived in a world where abortions were legal and they were able to be done. Ireland only passed abortion laws in 2018. So it's extremely recent. And like, we have like anecdotes and everything else to say that like making abortion legal or like making laws around abortion does not stop the abortions. I agree that there is other things that we need to do, but I mean, like, are you against the abortion laws then because you're like saying that they're they're not decreasing the amount of them. I guess I'm just kind of confused on your position.
Well, I struggle. Like, as a pro-lifer, I support anti-abortion laws. Mainly, these abortion laws, the whole purpose of these states that are passing these abortion laws, their entire purpose is that they're trying to get them kicked all the way up to our Supreme Court because they're going after the chance to overturn Roe v. Wade. And that's the point of them passing these extremely limiting abortion laws, because they know that they're going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. And that's going to give the pro-life movement the chance to challenge Roe v. Wade at SCOTUS. And like, they've been completely transparent about that agenda. But I do struggle because these states that are, these extremely red states that are passing these laws currently, like, they have extremely high infant mortality rates. They have extremely high maternal mortality rates. You know, they have foster care problems. They're not fixing the underlying issues that lead to abortion in their state in the first place. And whenever I see a state that has passed an abortion law, I'm like, great, you know, you've gotten like one thing under your belt. Now you need to address the fact that your, you know, maternal mortality rate is like off the charts horrible. You need to do something about your foster care system. Like, now that you guys, you know, all you Republicans have tackled the abortion, like, you need to get your shit together in all of these other areas so that you're not just leaving women to die in poorly kept hospitals with bad staffing that aren't addressing their issues that are causing them to die in childbirth or recently postpartum.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of largely kind of agree with tackling all of these extra things, but I mean, it still doesn't really kind of, like, I don't really kind of get why tackling all of that is not, it's good for its usages and everything else like that, and it does like extremely good and positive things, etc., but it still doesn't change the fact that, like, if something is physically everything else dependent on you, that you shouldn't be forced to continue giving it like nutrients and everything to do with life.
Well, and this is kind of where I disagreed with Tjump, is because he says that intention doesn't matter. And in my opinion, it does, because he likes to, this is why we go round in circles. You know, Tjump and I have been over this in our one-on-one debate. We kind of just go in circles around these analogies, because at the end of the day, there is nothing that you can truly compare to the relationship between a woman and a preborn human that had absolutely no say or gave no consent to being brought into existence, cannot consent in how the development of a human being is, and is in no way consent to trying to harm you, has no intention of harming you. And in all of these other analogies, you can put intent into play, and that does come into play whenever you're talking about self-defense. Whereas with a fetus, it is a completely unique situation where there is a human being that had no consent in coming into existence, is not consenting. They're not asking to be dependent on a woman to develop, and they are in no way intending to cause harm, or even you can't even say that they're trying to just survive, because they're not. They have no way of consenting to any of this. And I do believe that that does need to play a part in these conversations, because like Tjump has said, this is the ending of a human life. And yes, pregnancy, I've gone through it twice. Childbirth sucks, it hurts, and we do have high maternal mortality rates in childbirth, and that does need to be addressed. But we're talking about legally allowing the mass ending of human life, and just not just allowing it, but destigmatizing it and normalizing it and saying that it's a good thing to do.
Well, I actually think we can do that in analogies. We can actually match that non-intention very well. We could say, like, if we tied someone up and threw them at you, or like a catapulted them at you, so they have no intention, they have no choice, or tied them to a car and the car is barreling toward you and going to kill you, do you have a right to blow up the car to save your life? Yes. Even if it kills the person who's been tied up and who has no intention of harming you, you still have the right to kill the person in the car, because if you don't, they're going to kill you. So you do, even if there's no intention to harm someone, you still have the right to kill someone in self-defense, even if they have no intention or desire or control over what's happening to try to harm you. Their intention makes no difference to your right to kill them just going through the basic laws of self-defense of the 4 criterion of what constitutes lethal use of force, it's literally stated that if someone's coming at you, whether they intended or not, you have the right to use lethal force to stop them.
Sorry, my husband's talking to me. Yes, but like even in these analogies, it still doesn't perfectly replicate the relationship between a woman and her preborn child. This is her child. This is somebody that was brought into existence, that shares your DNA, that is a little small piece of you. I don't think that we can logically compare that to a stranger or even another family member or even a friend.
Okay, that's fair. So let's say that your child has been locked into a car and is barreling towards you. You would still be justified in blowing it up, even though you probably wouldn't. You would still be justified in doing that because it's coming straight at you. So even if it's your child that's tied up and has no control over it by some evil mastermind, you still have a right to kill them in self-defense.
But I think that as a society, and like this comes down to like it's very nuanced, but I think that you would have, even on the pro-choice side, people that are in support of abortion, I think that you would have a little bit of contention with that idea that you are justified in your choosing your life over that of your child.
And this was the whole point of my opening, is that we justify things for everybody has justifications for why they think this is a particular moral thing. And that's why throughout history, this has happened. Slavery, the treatment of women, these people thought this stuff was morally justified, right? What we've got to be talking about is what is more like, is it these kind of justifications, like we're worried the baby might kill us? Is it this fear of the future that we can't read that's causing us to have these abortions? Like, we should be dealing with not what could happen, but knowing, like we said, that we know that the better decision would to give these babies up for adoption. Or I would really hope that in the beginning, people would be more responsible. But if that's not the case, we should get these babies up for adoption. And we could certainly afford it in this country with the amount of money we spend. We can cut just a fraction of our military and we'd be able to do a lot more spending.
That is true, but I mean, you're like kind of overlooking the fact that like most parents, when they're going, or like most wannabe parents, when they're going into adopt children, they want and this is kind of based on the stats, they want white young boys. So it's kind of automatically getting rid of, and this is babies as well. So they're kind of like cut off. Let's just say it's 2 or 3. So like 2 or 3 above, if they're in foster care, they're statistically not going to be adopted. If there are siblings that have been taken out of a household by CPS, like a wannabe parent, even though they might sympathize and stuff like that, they're not going to, like, most people are not going to adopt 2, like, even children, not even like teenagers, but children. But they're not going to adopt 1 because they don't want to break up the siblings. So I get where you're coming from, and I like the idea of adoption.
Children. Yeah.
Sorry?
Well, we create systems then that can protect these children. We can split atoms. We can put people on the moon. We could figure out a way to take care of child care.
Yeah, and honestly,
the children in this country,
yeah, honestly, like I'm not going to, but I could seriously rant for days about how incredibly messed up our child welfare system is, our foster care system is, and our adoption system. The fact that we're basically using children as like something to buy and sell. The cost of adoption in this country is absolutely ridiculous. I've met so many people in pro-life activism that talk about wanting to adopt so badly, but they can't because they simply can't afford it, because we see children in the adoption system as commodities and we charge out the butt to adopt a child. Families that are perfectly capable, middle class families that could easily afford to take in these kids and give them a loving home are barred from it because of the extreme costs of adoption in this country.
We agree on all of that stuff. Like, I think that we should absolutely offer opportunities, cheap opportunities for adoption, and give women subsidies for pregnancy and time off work. All of that stuff matters, but we shouldn't, in addition to that, ban abortion. They should still have the option to get an abortion, simply because the 9 months of harm done to their body qualifies under the medical definition of great bodily harm, and they shouldn't be forced to suffer that without their consent. Like, forcing them to suffer that without their consent is slavery. It's immoral. You shouldn't do that. So in addition to all these things you're saying, which would be great, they should still have the right to get an abortion to prevent the bodily harm that's going to happen to them just from a regular pregnancy without any complications.
Is Skylar
And
talking
did
to
I think,
us?
yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I was gonna say that I think they do consent. I think that's the idea. If you do the actions to get you pregnant, that's consent. You're consenting to get pregnant. Like if I eat Big Macs every day, right, and I keep eating like out and Coca-Colas, I'm gonna, it's naturally, it's gonna make me fat, right? But I'm choosing to do the things that will get me fat. I'm choosing to do the things that will get me pregnant. So you have consented to that pregnancy by doing the action that gets you literally pregnant.
That's
If
literally.
you get into a car, are you consenting to getting in a car crash?
Car crash, they're different than a pregnancy.
How?
How?
Well, it's
no,
not,
but just
first of
using
all,
the
yeah,
same
yeah,
line
yeah.
of what you've just said, though, because
Yeah.
if you eat a Big Mac and then you get fat, then that's your fault. If you
Sure.
get into a car and you get into a car crash, then that's surely your fault as well, right?
Yeah, I consent
Using your
to
same line of logic.
I would say that I'm consenting to the chance of getting in a car accident. Because because I know that anytime I step in that car, and I've been in bad car accidents, that I am taking a chance. Just like anytime I step out that door, just like anytime I have sex, I know what the repercussions could bring. And every time I do something, I measure them to see whether I'm going to do something or not, or whether I have to some degree.
So consent means that you give permission for something to happen. The fact that you accept consequences is not giving permission for those consequences to happen. It's just accepting that they could happen. Those are two
You
different
can't
things.
consent to sperm, Tom. You can't tell your sperm to consent. But
Yeah,
like
well,
if you stick your
that's
dick
the
in a
point.
blender, your dick's going to get blended.
You can't
Right?
consent.
Like, I
That's
mean,
right.
you're
You
acting
can't
as if like
consent.
there's no connection between what people do
No,
and
no.
the reactions that happen, and somehow they're like they have no fault in it, is what you're saying. No, they have
No.
fault in it.
No, that's not how it works. That's not how
They have
consent works.
responsibility in it. You say they have no responsibility.
Stop interrupting. So
Yeah,
you
hold on.
Sorry.
Let
I
Tjump
apologize.
finish.
as
I
you
apologize,
said, you're
Tjump.
right. You can't consent to getting pregnant. You have no control over your biology, which means by definition, you can't consent to it. Now, obviously, you can
consent to sex,
which
the
is
thing
not
that gets
consenting to
people
pregnancy.
pregnant. That's the very thing that gets you
No,
pregnant.
Skylar, that's an appeal to
Yes, it is.
nature
If you're
fallacy.
saying sex doesn't get
Stop
people
interrupting,
pregnant,
Skylar.
is that what
So-
you're saying?
Stop interrupting, Skylar. So you can
Well,
consent.
you're
to
talking as I'm talking too, so I'm trying to be better.
I haven't finished my point yet.
Yeah,
I haven't
let
finished
Tjump finish his
talking.
point.
So, as I said, consenting to sex is not ever consenting to pregnancy. By definition, we know that is wrong. We know logically we can prove that argument is wrong because it's an appeal to nature or naturalistic fallacy. You can consent to doing one action without consenting to consequences, which is why someone who takes drugs, we don't just say, oh, we're not going to treat you because you consented to the consequences. No, we still let them go to the doctor because they didn't consent to the consequences. Literally, getting an abortion is saying, I do not. Skylar.
It's not complicated. This is a complicated point you're making. I got it 5 minutes ago.
So
I love the response. I got it 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, let him finish, Skylar. Let Tjump. They'll go to you back to you, Skylar.
I got the point. We understand what you're saying.
It's not about you, Skylar. So it's about the audience. So literally, getting an abortion means you do not consent to this person being inside of you. You are imposing consent on them. You are trying to force them to consent to something which they are saying, I don't want. So if they're literally saying, I don't want this, that's literally the opposite of consent. You can't then impose consent on them by saying, oh, well, you did the action that led to it, therefore you consent. Obviously not, because that's the point of the abortion, is they don't.
When you sign waivers, like you go in a restaurant, like you sign a waiver because you're going to eat something hot, right? Like you're consenting that things could happen to you if you eat these hot chilies, right?
Sure.
Like nature, these chilies are naturally through nature going to do something to you, just like pregnancy is going to. But you're responsible because you chose to eat the chilies. You knew what what nature would do, but you chose it anyway. And what you're trying to do is like basically say, well, you want to take away the responsibility for the actions of people and be like, well, since the baby, now you have a baby, this is step 2. We're forgetting about step 1, the actions of people. And now you're saying, well, step 2, well, since you have the baby, it is kind of imposing on you. It might hurt you a little, so you should be able to kill it.
Skylar, for someone
I don't see how that's reasonable.
For someone who eats too many chilies and they're like getting sick, what do we do with them? Do we just point and laugh and say, oh, you're just stuck with it, deal with it? Or do we give them to the hospital and cure them?
Sure. If you mean that killing fetuses is the cure for pregnancy,
Yep.
sure, that analogy. But
Yep, that's exactly right.
Again,
We don't just
again, like
It's like it's the cure for economic hardships, right? But that's
again,
just
like
this is how
with
you
these
choose to
analogies,
focus your.
guys.
Yeah.
Like these analogies, like again, they don't work because pregnancy is a completely unique situation. Whereas if you choose to engage in sexual intercourse, knowing that pregnancy is a possible outcome, and then say, well, I didn't consent to getting pregnant, so now I'm going to end the life of another human being, this is different than all of these other circumstances. Whereas like you get addicted to drugs and you go and get treatment, or you eat something too spicy and you need treatment at the hospital. None of these situations, none of these analogies end in killing another innocent human being that of no consent of their own, no volition of their own, no intention of their own, is having their life ripped away from them because of the actions of two other people.
But we can literally just add that into the analogy. This is covered in philosophy.
Yeah.
So like if some evil hamburger monster doesn't like the fact that you eat hamburgers, and every time you eat hamburgers he decides to kidnap you and impregnate you, do you have the rights, or kidnap you and hook you up to a violinist to keep them alive because he doesn't like that you ate hamburgers? Are you responsible to keep the violinist alive, or can you just detach and let the violinist die? Yeah, you can just detach, like just kill the violinist because you didn't consent to this action. You didn't consent to being a part of this violinist. Even if you knew it could happen, even if you knew there's this evil doctor out there who's going to kidnap you and hook you up to a violinist if you eat cheeseburgers, you still have the right to eat cheeseburgers. Like you aren't obligated to abide by these rules that have been imposed on you by an outside force that you had no say in. Like, so we can literally add that in. So this analogy I just gave you, the violinist one that my partner mentioned at the beginning, has a person's life in it. You didn't choose to be hooked up to this person. You were a victim of biology or nature or a psychopath. You have every right to detach yourself, even at the cost of their life, because you're not obligated to live by nature's rules or some psychopath's rules yet you didn't consent to.
Again, we're kind of just like I said earlier, we're just going in circles with these analogies because this kind of just circles back to, the unique relationship between it being, a child, this is your child, and on the social aspect of the argument, whether or not, there is a stigma around you choosing your life over your child's life.
We could just
I mean,
make the violinist your
We're
child.
not even like necessarily even saying that like it's not a unique engagement, but I mean like what we're saying is that I mean like if you don't have to provide like sustenance, if you don't have to provide the qualities that like is giving somebody else life in one instance, then why do you in someone else in some different instance? Like that's the kind of point that we're kind of getting at.
It's because you made decisions that got you in that position.
Well, in my analogy, you do that. In my analogy, you literally do that. You make decisions that get you into that situation.
Sure, like yeah, but in any yes, in some kind of wild scenario, like I take the chance of anything happening when I walk out that door. Right, I could get chopped up by an axe murderer. I could be kidnapped by a serial killer. Maybe I don't know. There's tons of things that could happen. Right? Yeah, you take that chance, but we should be real within how we view things and how things happen. Right? If you don't drive a car or you don't get in cars, you're far less likely to get in a car accident. Right? And if you don't have sex or you be more responsible, right? You are less likely to get pregnant. I'm sorry, people aren't going to get away with this idea that there's no responsibility on these folks. Therefore, they can go ahead because it hurts the mother, and now they can terminate the life. They should have thought of that in the first place.
Well, you should have thought of that before you ate had the cigarette. So we're just not going to treat you anymore.
But it's not.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
But in regards to like treatment, again, like in regards to treatment of cigarettes, like it's not like you're just going to get treatment. Like a life is ending, and it needs to be a more nuanced conversation than that, because like, yeah, you had cigarettes and now you have lung cancer, you need to be treated for cancer. Well, you had sex and you got pregnant. Well, now you have the chance to decide whether or not you're going to end the life of another human being.
So that still fits into the analogies I've already brought forward pretty exactly. So somebody kidnaps you because you did something they didn't like, and they hooked you up to another human being. You had no consent to this. There's another human being there. If you detach yourself, they're going to die. Do you have the right to detach yourself?
Well, but this analogy, like I love how you always phrase it as like you did something that I don't like. I don't care if people have sex. Go ahead, have sex, have sex as much as you want. have protected sex, have unprotected sex. Like, I'm not here to police people having sex.
Just to
I
clarify,
love sex. I think it's great.
I wasn't talking about you. I'm saying, like, if there was a psychopath who didn't like you doing something like eating a cheeseburger, and you knew this, and so you knew there's this evil guy who just kidnaps anybody who eats cheeseburgers and hooks them up to another human being. So you know the consequences of the action. So I'm not saying you personally, and you still choose to eat cheeseburgers. So I have the right to eat cheeseburgers and feel good about myself. And then the evil doctor kidnaps you and hooks you up to another person. Do you have a right to detach yourself, even if that other person is going to die?
No, I understand the analogy, and I wasn't trying to say that you were saying something more than what you were saying. I'm just saying that, we're trying to make some sort of boogeyman out of just our natural biological makeup.
Yes, exactly.
Nature is horribly, horribly more immoral, for sure.
It depends on how your perspective is. Like, this is just about your perspective here.
Well, right. That's kind of
like, even the thing where you use the word right with your analogy, like, there's no right there. It's just whether does the person feel justified in unplugging themselves from the other person, right?
Well, right. That's
so in the end, like, yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's what I'm asking you. So, given my analogy, there's an evil guy doesn't like you eating cheeseburgers. You ate a cheeseburger, and you knew this was going to happen. He kidnapped you, hooked you up to another person. Do you have the right to detach yourself from this other person?
If there was a way that I could help that person, right, and I chose to detach myself when there was another possibility, right? Like if I said, hey, if I can just wait here an hour with this person, I'll have somebody come here in an hour, they'll be able to detach me, right?
9 months,
yes, it would be more. But if it's like no, no, I'm sorry, I'm out for myself. It's my selfish, subjective morals in that situation. I'm going to pull the plug.
Well, is there a time limit? So, like, obviously, if you can't ever leave, then you would just unplug yourself. If it was an hour, you would wait the hour. But how about 9 months? You had to sit there for 9 months, would you?
I think I would. Yeah, if it really meant saving somebody's life, listen, I'd give somebody a kidney if I could, right? Like, I mean, that's, maybe if they were a really awful person, I wouldn't. If they're like a child molester, I'd probably say no. But if they're like this normal, decent human being, like, I'm gonna be like,
let's be honest. If it's a child molester, like, we're not just pulling the plug. Like, other things are happening.
But I mean, it'd be moral to save the child molester, right? You'd be moral to save his life, to give yourself to save his life.
I will admit, I will be completely honest here. I have been completely honest and like open about this. Like, I'm a consistent life ethic activist. I don't believe in the death penalty. I'm anti-euthanasia and everything. But my one exception to this rule, this is where I'm horribly hypocritical, is whenever it comes to child abusers. Like, I don't care. Like, if I saw a child abuser being beaten to death in the street, I'd walk the other way and I wouldn't lose an ounce of sleep over it.
I mean, like, Skylar, you had said that you would give a kidney to save somebody else. Should the government force you to?
Force kidney, probably not. It would probably I've heard of this.
Okay, so why are you advocating that the government force women to give birth?
Well, because when you say force them to give birth, what you mean? What you mean is, why are you saying the government shouldn't tell people that they can't kill their fetuses, or kill the potential life? So, like, I don't view it in the sense of, like, why are you making to me, it'd be like, why are you allowing your children to live today? It's like, well, like, it's not that I'm allowing them to live. They're just alive and they're doing their thing. And I don't feel like I have the right to take their life.
Right. But there's still a little bit of a hypocrisy here, because you're okay with the government not forcing you to give an organ to somebody else, even if that is a life-saving organ, and you not giving that organ is going to kill that person. You're in favor of that not being something that is enforced by the government, but you are in favor of the government forcing women to give birth, because if them not doing it is going to save somebody else. So in both instances, if you don't do the thing, then somebody dies. But why are you okay with it in one instance and not the other?
But in organ donation, it's not just not doing the thing, whereas with abortion, it's directly, intentionally, with intent, going in and having a doctor kill someone. Whereas organ donation, if you choose not to donate your organs, which I believe everybody should be an organ donor, why let your organs rot in the ground after you're gone? But you're not going in and stabbing someone that needs a kidney. You're not intentionally directly causing the death of another human being by refusing to give an organ.
Yeah, it could be potentially, because, like, if they're the only match to this person that they find, and their time is running out, they only have a couple of weeks, maybe a month at max left. and they're saying to you, you're the only match that we found. If you don't give the organ, like, the chances are is that this person's going to die. Now, I know it's a little bit different because obviously in an abortion, it's 100% everything else like that. But the point still remains is that it is a little bit of a special pleading fallacy where you're okay with it in one instance and not in the other, even when both instances results in somebody dying.
But again, like you said, it is a little bit different. Like, they still have the chance at life. And I've had this conversation with Tjump before about how, like, if a woman doesn't want to be pregnant, would rather have had an abortion, and we can just get her to the point of viability and give that child a chance to live, like, I see that as a win. Even if the chances aren't extremely high, she gets to like 20, 21 weeks, and we know that there's not a high chance of survival, and she's down to either I'm going to have an abortion or you need to deliver this baby now. Like, at least they have a chance. Whereas with abortions, there is zero chance that life is going to end 100%. Two people go in, only one comes out.
Well, that actually leads back to my point with Skylar. So he said he would, if he had to sit there infinitely, he'd detach himself. But if he only had to wait an hour, he would definitely not. He would just wait the hour. So there's some like set amount of time where it's reasonable to wait versus not reasonable to wait. And that chime could be different for different people, right? Like, if you have to support a family and you have to go to work the next day, or your kids are going to starve, like, you're probably reasonable to detach yourself within the hour because you have to go do stuff to support your family, right?
Yeah, but this is like, but what I would consider is like, it's like, imagine I was holding on to my son's hand on the edge of a cliff, right? And like, I was the only one gripping his hand. And like, I'm like, oh, I could probably hold on for 2 more minutes. My hand's getting cramps, right? And I let go of the baby. Like, I think that it depends on like what the situation is, like what's a reasonable, and I get what your analogy is, like the idea of a reasonable amount of time. But realistically, if it's something that I can do, I'm going to do it to save the life.
Oh yeah,
right? I guess it would get to something like really absurd time periods that I'd have to maybe consider.
Oh yeah, for sure. But that would be different for each person, right? Each person has a different life, and what they have to do is different. Like, many people have multiple jobs; they work 2 full-time jobs to feed their kids, so they don't really have the ability to invest in a pregnancy, and what it could do to their body could cause them to not be able to feed their kids. And in those cases, even though it may not be medically necessary, it's still going to cause significantly damage to their life, which you really don't know. And so it should kind of be left up to them whether they have the right to detach themselves or not, right? You shouldn't force them to be like, nope, you're going to stay there attached to this person. Like, they should have the right to choose for themselves, shouldn't they?
Well, in those instances, that's where we come in with, support. Like, we need to be supporting these women that are in these situations that they would rather not be in, so that it doesn't cause significant damage. Women shouldn't have their whole lives, flipped upside down because they got pregnant whenever they didn't plan to.
Well, sure, if there's no consequences, then abortion should absolutely just be illegal. But that's the point here, is that there are consequences, so we have to incorporate those into the analogy. So in a perfect world where we can just solve all consequences to pregnancy, I agree, get rid of abortion because it's killing someone, you shouldn't kill someone. But that's not a realistic option here. So we have to keep in mind that there are consequences to pregnancy, to people's lives, to people's bodies. And many of the people who are getting pregnancies are poor people who have to spend a lot of time working and don't really have the option to just wait it out. There are serious consequences to their lives. A regular pregnancy can cause serious consequences to their lives. And so they should have the right to make this choice. And it shouldn't be restricted to them by made illegal, or the government shouldn't be able to make this choice for them, or you shouldn't be able to make this choice for them. They're the ones who should have the right to make this choice. And taking that away from them is, to me, seems very much like slavery.
Well, I don't know if I'd call it slavery, but it certainly does limit their choice to terminate the life of their fetuses. Listen, I get, like, I'm kind of with you, Tom, in the sense of, like, I wouldn't ever personally vote to change the laws right now if we didn't have protections for women, right? Like, it would be kind of a useless thing to do for us to just make abortion illegal and change nothing about our society and how we do things in our laws. This is why I have much more nuance in the position with it. But on the other hand, though, I think that it's important that we really start to talk about, like, how we, like, the value of human life. And like what scares me about things is like how we get to a point of how humans talk about fetuses, right? How they don't talk about it as if it's someone's potential future or I mean I've heard people just say like a sack of flesh or cells like that, and that is not the way like anybody, like, at least anybody I've met who's been pregnant talked about their future child, right? Those people that those fetuses usually have names and futures people imagine. What scares me is the way we as a society have just made it so nonchalant. How easy it is just how easy it is to get an abortion, but how easy the decision to make the abortion because of fear of what the future holds has become so prevalent these days.
So I'm going to interject really quick. We have about 10 to 15 minutes. We're going to wrap her up and get to Super Chats. And yeah, I just want to give you guys a 10-minute head start warning.
Yeah, so neither me or my opponent made the claim that the fetus isn't alive. So that wasn't a part of either of our arguments.
No, but I'm talking about the way that we treat fetuses. Even you throughout this debate, you constantly just said, well, you used it as the analogy as if it's a person with a knife attacking the woman. Right. You did make analogies about how dangerous the fetus was, and you were making analogies about how it's almost like an attacker.
It causes physical harm to the body. That was the analogy. Not its intention, as I mentioned multiple times, has
so
no
drinking
difference.
alcohol causes physical harm to the body.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So just saying it has physical harm to the body doesn't give you an excuse to end the potential life of a fetus.
Yes, it
right?
does.
It doesn't. No.
If you're going to,
I mean, technically under the Constitution, yes, if you're saying settled law in that sense. But if you're just saying like, we're not arguing necessarily the total legality of it tonight. We're just talking about abortion versus
right. And I think
pro-life position. Yeah,
I think the legality gets that right. If there is great bodily harm that's going to happen to your body, you have every right to do anything required to stop that from happening. I think that's correct. I think that is the correct thing to do by the law and by morally standards.
Yeah. Yes, so the natural function of pregnancy, you feel, because the natural function of pregnancy, you believe, is enough to where it's justified to kill life, right? Just kind of like God in the Bible, where just being born is justified enough for God to drown the babies in the Bible, right? And your sense, hey, simply being pregnant, right, justifies the woman in order to take the life of the baby.
Yeah, like if someone came at you with a bowling ball and was going to shove it up your butt, then yeah, you'd be.
The baby doesn't have. This is what I'm talking about. Talking as if a baby is a character with a bowling ball.
This has nothing to do with the baby.
It's not equal analogy. It's not equal analogy.
Skylar, this has nothing to do with the baby.
You're talking about life as if they're murderers.
Skylar, this has nothing to do with the baby. Skylar, this has nothing to do with the baby.
Yes, it has everything to do with the fetus.
Skylar, the only thing I'm talking about here is the harm caused to the body. That's it. The analogy, if you take the exact same amount of harm caused to the body by pregnancy, take out the child, replace it with a bowling ball, is that great bodily harm? If someone came at you with a bowling ball,
it's not great bodily harm in the same context. What you're talking about?
Hey guys,
you're trying to make bodily. You're talking about as pregnancy is this awful thing for women. A lot of women enjoy pregnancy. I can see you talking as if it's just a terrible thing. That's what I don't.
Hey guys. I feel like we're just going in circles, and I really quick wanted to ask Stephen something, because he said something about ectopic pregnancies, and it's my understanding, I have met like 2 or 3 in the 7 years that I've been a pro-life activist that are against treatment for ectopic pregnancies. We consider them not pro-life, they're just crazy and stupid. But it is my understanding, because you live in Ireland, like even whenever abortion was illegal, women did still have access to that treatment, correct?
Only after 2014.
Only after 2014. So before that, if like they had an ectopic pregnancy, like what was the course of action there? Like, did Ireland see like a huge number of female deaths because of ectopic pregnancies?
So I mean, like, yes and no. There was one extremely famous case in Ireland in 2013. Which was a woman was in hospital. It was in Galway in Ireland, and she contracted septicemia because her baby died as the result of an ectopic pregnancy. There was 2 doctors that signed off that was like, yes, I know it's unconstitutional, yada, 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 but, like, this is some serious shit. We need to get the baby out. The hospital refused to do it, and she died. It caused, like, massive,
You're talking about Savita Halapenavar.
Yeah. I couldn't think of her name, but yes, that is the exact person that I'm talking about. Yeah. So basically, as a result of her case, Ireland changed its laws on if the pregnancy is a significant risk to the mother. But look, it may be anecdotal. It may be kind of, I'm plucking this out of thin air and trying to make something with it. But if this was allowed to happen once, it's not unreasonable to suggest that it might have been allowed to happen more than once. So I don't know the exact numbers on how many women suffered because of an ectopic pregnancy, but as I said, the laws was only there starting in 2014.
Yeah, and I found her case to be super, super interesting. It got a lot of attention even over here. And I did read an article. It was by several doctors from like multiple different countries talking about how like even under Ireland's laws at the time, like the medical errors of the hospital staff there were just like astronomically terrible. And this is a conversation that like a lot of pro-lifers aren't willing to have. Like we talk about how, even if abortion were made like 100% illegal tomorrow, like women would still have access to life-saving care. But we don't talk about how like that would look in a post, legal abortion society, what steps we can take legally to make sure that women aren't in these situations. And I do think that it's an important conversation to have, because we don't want women dying from a septic pregnancy that, or an ectopic pregnancy where, the fetus is very obviously not going to survive. Deliver the baby, try to save the woman. And I do believe that overwhelmingly the majority of pro-life people are on the side of life-saving care, and if the fetus does happen to not survive, then that's an unfortunate outcome. But I do believe that it is a conversation that we need to dig deeper into and make sure that whenever we're having a conversation about making abortion illegal, that we are making sure that that goes a step further and making sure that women aren't in these situations.
Yeah, there was just one other thing that I just kind of wanted to tack on to that. Even after that law was passed in 2014, there was still a lot of kind of pushback from the hospitals. It may be a little bit of a personal anecdote and stuff like that. I had said in my opening that that like whereas it wasn't my goal, I've lost a child to an ectopic pregnancy, so even in that case, like when like she was going about it, she was diagnosed as having an ectopic pregnancy and stuff like that. Like we still had to fight to have the hospital do something in that case because it was before 2018, before abortions were legal here. So like even after it was kind of passed and even after it was done and stuff like that, like there was still a lot of extra work or extra kind of head work that needed to be done after that.
Well, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. But here in the U.S., there is a concentrated effort to kind of change the way that hospitals and medical staff label ectopic pregnancy removal. Like if we remove, because it is still labeled as like an abortion here, whenever you have an ectopic pregnancy removed, there's a concentrated effort to change the way that those are labeled. So if it's not labeled as an abortion, if it's labeled as something different than if abortion were to be made illegal or even cracked down on, that women would still have access and not have to go through so many hoops to get that life-saving care, because it's incredibly time sensitive to have an ectopic pregnancy removed as soon as possible.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. She went to 9 weeks after it was said that this was happening. So like it was getting to kind of point where it was. I don't want to make it about me, and we can move on after this. But I mean, it was, it was still a pretty significant fight that we had to do to kind of have it sorted and stuff like that. So yeah. Anyway, enough about me. We can move on. It's not like it's a touchy subject. Obviously, I brought it up, but it's just
Yeah, we're getting near the end here. We can wrap this up. So if you guys have a finishing comment or a concluding remark, that'd be great too.
I don't have anything to add to the conversation, so.
I think this is like mine and Skylar. This is our revenge match because we both got our debate stolen from the debate tournament because we both got robbed.
We did. We got robbed. Sorry, I'm sorry, Tom, for over talking you a lot tonight. I was excited to get to talk to Tom. We're friends, so we don't. He doesn't, I hope
Are
he
you
doesn't
kidding me?
take
That makes it
personally.
more entertaining. It's
Yes.
better.
Yeah,
But yeah, it was fun, man. I was so expecting to see Tom in our. I think I swear I thought we were going to be the two in the last round yesterday. So it
Like
was
half the people got robbed on that one. It was
yes. But there'll be more in the future. We'll get to see more in the future, hopefully. Congratulations, G. You did a great job. God's engineer won it.
Oh wow. So we're gonna finish it up there. That was a captivating discussion. We appreciate all our interlocutors for engaging in a passionate discussion, yet civil. So I think we're gonna switch gears and go into the super chats, unless someone wants to have a concluding remark, and then we'll just go from there. So, does anyone have something to say before you go? Okay.
I'm good.
What happened to your creepy kid picture?
It was lagging. I started lagging my screen. I had to take them off. Like, come on.
You didn't want to scare any small children.
So,
just one thing, Praise.
Sure.
My co-host from my channel told me that he sent in super chats under the channel name, so it's going to look like I'm asking myself questions, but I'm not. Just wanted to put that out there.
Sure,
Oh, yeah.
sure. We believe you.
So we got Steven Steen, 499, the jokester. He says, 2 years ago I got Tom pregnant at a MDD live event. Mario Fiction convinced Tom to keep our baby, and now our handsome boy Praise is hosting the debate.
True story.
God.
True story.
Oh my gosh. Good gosh, Steven.
I knew I recognized that kid from somewhere.
So this is exactly what Steven's talking about. Cider and port for $5. How can a 5-year-old physically or biologically give birth?
I believe she had like a medical condition that caused her reproductive system to like she went through puberty way earlier than she should have.
That is possible. There is a lot of there is unfortunately a lot of other cases just like hers. They're a little bit older, but typically kind of like what happens in those situations absent a medical condition is, and I kind of almost feel like I want to put a trigger warning on front of this because it's pretty fucking gruesome. Essentially, what happens in those cases is that the child is raped from the day that it's born. And as a defense mechanism, the body goes into early onset puberty so that it can like survive the sex. It's very, very gruesome, but essentially that's what happens. And because it goes into early onset puberty, obviously a result of that is that you can get pregnant. And so that's how it happens. It's very rare. I do want to kind of point that out as well. It is very, very rare, but these cases do exist.
Yeah, and in that case of the 5-year-old giving birth, she was that her biological father was also the father of her child, so she was being abused.
And this was addressed to Steven and Tjump. If you guys want to finish with, you have the final remark on that. So we'll go to the next super chat. Mike Billers for $5 to all. Have you always had your stance? Question mark. If not, can you share why you changed your mind?
I'll take that first. No, I haven't always been pro-life. I grew up in a traditional conservative home, so I was always told that I was pro-life. But during my like rebellious period as a teenager, it was just starting to become like a fad for teenagers to be pro-choice and talk about it. And I labeled myself as pro-choice for about 2 years. And then I had a pregnancy scare, and the potential father of my child told me that if I was pregnant, that I needed to quote unquote take care of it. And so I started researching abortion, and I was horrified, and I have been pro-life ever since.
I wouldn't say that like I've kind of always been pro. I didn't even really kind of look into the argument. I was an extremely ignorant and very dumb teenager. I still am for like pretty ignorant and dumb, but I never really kind of thought about my position on it. And then obviously the case in 2014, as we were talking about, like that came up, and the conversation kind of evolved. And then the vote in 2018, that's kind of when I solidified my stance as being pro-choice.
I would say that I guess I've been pro-life most of my life. I mean, I've given it much more thought in my older years. I grew up in the Catholic Church when I was younger. It's probably where some of this comes from. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's just gotten some nuance over the years, and I've been a little bit more focused on it. But I think generally I've been pretty pro-life most of my thinking career, I guess.
I had no position on it for most of my life, and I was researching the academic literature when researching morality, and came across all the big arguments from the academics comparing point by point all of the similarities between all the different analogies of when it's justified to take a human life and when it's not, and do we hold responsibility for things nature imposes on us, and when do we not? And just when you quantify it, it seems like it falls more on the side that it's an involuntary imposition on the woman without her consent, and she should be justified in removing it, just like any form of self-defense. And so that's what caused me to be pro-choice.
Appreciate your responses. This is Banned for Life for $10. Thank you for your super chat. I don't like abortion, but I dislike children being born to parents who want them even more.
Dislike children being born to parents who do want them?
I've got to assume it's still.
You sure you did like?
Oh.
Is that either a misquote or a mistype? Because
no, I agree. I agree. 100% agree.
Or is it a troll? It's very possible.
Yeah, could be.
Expensive troll, but.
Yeah, I mean, you have to admire his commitment. It was $10, you know? He could have.
Yeah. So let's go to the next one. Will Stewart, THFC rants for $9.99. Thank you for your super chat. Tom, an appeal to a nature fallacy is something being good if natural and or bad if not. How does this apply for being responsible for the consequences? Are you not guilty of the fallacy? Question mark?
No. So two things there. One is that saying that, for example, pregnancy is good, or that you have an obligation to carry the child to term because it's natural, would be an appeal to nature fallacy. A fallacy is saying that there's a fallacy in the argument, therefore the conclusion is wrong. And that's not what I'm arguing. I'm arguing that their justification is fallacious, but their conclusion could be right for other reasons, but that justification can provably be shown false. So
I don't think I'm qualified. I don't think I'm qualified to be here anymore because my brain just died.
Yeah. And we have to go by priorities, so we just had $100 super chat from Zir Rafa. My gosh, thank you for your super chat. That's
praise. That's $5.
Oh. Well, that's in check money or something. Well, $5 or whatever. Okay. That was a good face palms. That was a face palm moment. Okay. Well, I might as well just do it anyway. So, okay, for at pro-life, which is worse, child molesting or child killing? If a chance at life is more important than lack of suffering, why is your hate for the pro-choice side not at least as strong as for pedos?
One is self-defense of your body, one is not.
And honestly, like, you can look at any of my content on any platform. My hatred for abortion and my hatred for pedophiles is pretty freaking equal.
Yeah, in fact, I think we even talked a little bit about it during this debate. Like, we talked about how much we don't like pedophilia. I think we could both hate both of them. I guess, like, we could both.
Wood chipper go burr.
Yeah. I don't know. Here.
Gotcha.
Fargo reference.
So here's Layman for $5. Thank you for your super chat. I ask this in every abortion debate. Does everyone support making all birth control free through taxes?
Yep.
I do, yeah.
Free birth control. Let's do it.
I guess.
That's a unanimous yes. And then we got Chris Gaiman for $4.99. K, why not just work to provide all women the resources they need to hopefully avoid abortion, but leave the practice legal? Laws don't work? So what? Question mark.
Well, That is mainly like what the fight is right now for people like me. I mean, we are working to lower abortion rates as much as we possibly can through social means. But whenever at the end of the day, whenever it comes down to it, there are, even if we eliminate all socioeconomic reasons, there are still going to be abortions that happen. And being that I believe that life begins at conception, and I oppose killing human beings from natural start of life to natural end of life, I'm going to be opposed to elective abortions in any case and scenario.
Thank you for your response. We have Zorbu coming at you, Skylar. If you think pregnancy is always a choice, what happens if someone gets pregnant from rape? Is that a choice, Skylar?
I don't think all pregnancy is a choice. But yes, there are people who have gotten raped and have children. All I'll say is that I don't see why those folks, that potential life doesn't deserve to live at some point. Like we don't blame people for the sins of their father, right? You're just because they may be genetically related to someone who committed such a vile act, certainly doesn't mean that child will one day commit such a vile act. And that person could grow up to save many lives or have very positive influence on humanity. So
Gotcha.
that's what I would say.
So Zorbu again for another $5. Protection doesn't always work, and if you say that's a medical problem, then how do the doctors determine that? So that's directed at everyone, I think.
I don't think that birth control not always working as a medical problem. I think it shows signs that like we need better options, and we do. I don't like the idea that birth control is almost 100% the responsibility of women, and that we have the option of like completely fucking up our hormones or having to have something implanted, a little piece of metal or plastic implanted inside us. I think that the market does absolutely need to be pushed against more for better options and for options for people of all genders.
For all men, I agree with that. I would take a pill. Like if there was like some pill that would make sure that my wife would not get pregnant, 100%. I just need to get the snip though. I think that'll probably be the most effective out there. Do it, guys, out there. Don't make you
We
women
do
go
need
through
to
all this.
normalize. We need to normalize vasectomies, guys.
Seriously, it's so innovative for most men. They don't even need to put people to sleep. I think nowadays it's like with a laser. I don't even think it cuts you anymore. It's literally a laser, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Right? And then instead of making women take these drugs that mess with your hormones, cause all kinds of other problems, yeah, I don't. Step up, men. Take the birth control.
There you go. So we have another super chat from Zorbu again, the third one in a row for $2.
Wow.
Thank you, Zorbu. Do impregnated rape victims consent to being pregnant?
Of course not.
I don't think anybody like made that argument. We're not arguing that rape victims consented to getting pregnant. I make the argument against abortions in cases of rape for the exact same thing that Skylar said. No, we don't punish innocent human beings for the acts of somebody else. I don't think that life is any less valuable because of how they were conceived, and I don't think they have any less of a right to life because of how they were conceived.
There are many people throughout history that are products of rape, and they've done amazing things and made very impactful moments on other people's lives.
If you want to talk about rape, go out and educate men on not raping women.
Gotcha. This is Mark Reed for $5. Skylar and Kay. Why would a woman suspend her right to bodily autonomy in this specific case?
Because, like I said multiple times throughout this conversation, this is ending the life of another human being, and not just any other human being. This woman's offspring, this woman's child, a piece of her, a part of her that had absolutely no consent in being brought into existence and has no consent on how the trajectory of their first 9 months of life plays out.
I agree.
Thank you for your response. We got Ferran Salas. If I said that wrong, I apologize for butchering that. For $9.99. Pro-lifers, what percentage do you assign to a mother versus a fetus in regards to a value number? Question mark. 50-50, 60-40, etc. How did you derive at that ratio?
Are you saying like how do we look at them like in terms of equality? Because I see all human beings as equally important and equally valuable, and I think that's consistent.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
Fair enough.
I don't go into my head and think, okay, 51% for the woman, 49% for the fetus, and because of X, Y, and Z, like.
I don't think anybody
It's
does
obviously subjective. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's some subjectivity to it here, but
Yeah. So we'll go to the next one, cider and port. So we've been explained with that. So thank you for your $5 super chat, Stephen. What improvements to sex ed are you advocating for?
I mean, I think that the amount of sex ed that people are getting now is like there's a value to it, but I think that like a lot of it is kind of a little bit useless, I guess, in a way. I mean, like we were told in our sex ed that like that like this is the vulva and this is the uvula. I don't need to know that. You know what I mean? If I'm having sex with somebody and I see her ovaries, I've made a colossal fucking error. I think that I mean, like with sex ed as well. I mean, it's the whole thing. Like, I'm not necessarily advocating that like the people who are giving sex ed like go into like a massive amount of detail. But all I will say is, the first time that I was having sex with a woman and she asked me to choke her, I was like, well, I missed that slide in the fucking PowerPoint. So there's a lot of improvements that I think needs to be made to sex ed, but yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you for your
more than abstinence
response.
only.
well, that's true.
Yeah.
So Ken Hovind CPA for $2. I've had it up here with fetuses. Not sure.
Yeah, I can't stand Stevenson either. I agree.
Them fetuses, though.
Yeah, we'll go for Connor Connor D for $5. Thank you for your super chat. If a woman can revoke consent during sex, can she do the same thing during pregnancy?
It's not the same equivalent because if you revoke consent during sex, then all you have is probably some douche that's pissed off. If you revoke consent during pregnancy, another human being dies.
You want to respond to that, Tjump or Steven?
No, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so we go to Sigma Ani for $5. What does a collection of cells become? Totes, a real boy, no killy question mark. I'm not sure where he's going with that one.
Life begins at conception. It becomes totally human at conception. Whether or not it's a boy or a girl is written in the genetic code at conception.
I mean, what is it? 6 weeks, and there's a heartbeat in the circulatory system already by 6 to 8 weeks, something along that line. People don't even know they're pregnant usually till about 6 weeks most of the time.
Oh, and in response to that whole sex ed thing, like I think they should go super into detail. I think that everybody should learn the full extent of pregnancy throughout all 9 months, and maybe less people will have sex irresponsibly.
Yes.
Gotcha. We'll go to the next one. Steven Steen coming at you. Next analogy loses the debate. Oh, Steven. Let's see here. I'm going to get sunflower. So we'll go to the next one from Korag Nightwolf. Skylar, love you, man. I'm a big fan, but would you say eating is consent to choking on food, or swimming is consent to drowning?
So when I eat food, I am acknowledging and consenting to the possibility that I could choke on it. Same thing with going swimming. If I go swimming, I'm consenting that there is a danger that I'm putting myself in, especially here in Florida because we have alligators in our water and you don't mess with alligators. But yes, I do feel that whenever I make a decision to do whatever, X, Y, and Z, there are things and repercussions that can come from it. And I try to limit those bad things that can come from things by avoiding them to some degree. I don't know.
Gotcha. Nut Korag again for $5. Thank you, Korag. Thanks for this debate the secular way. This is how it's done. Keep them coming. So we have we're gonna go to Sunflower for $5. You guys want to respond to that really quick before we go to the next one, or?
No.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Awesome.
Sunflower for $5. What's up, Sunflower? Pornography is among the most harmful and ubiquitous things in the modern world. It should be more heavily regulated.
Opposite of that. It is actually
Yeah,
very beneficial.
I was just going to say the first part of that statement is just factually untrue. Even without kind of getting into the rebuttal of it, it's just factually untrue.
In many, many ways.
I would just say maybe some of the online porn sites like Pornhub probably could do better at how they upload their videos and verifying, people are over the age of 18, because that's they've had some problems with that in the recent year. But I don't particularly have a problem with adults watching adult entertainment in general.
Yeah, I agree. As long as they're not exploiting children, like, live and let live.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you for your response. Sunday worship for $10. Cats can terminate their own pregnancies at will. Is that immoral? If humans could do that, would your position change? Does the fact that humans require a third party to abort change its morality?
It would be kind of, I don't know, like imagine. Could you imagine like someone at 9 months pregnant could be like, "Nah, I don't want this," and then just terminate the pregnancy at that point? It seems like that would be pretty heinous at that point. I don't know, like the cats thing is silly, but like I don't know with the idea of like humans, if they could do it, whether it would be moral or not. I guess I don't know. It's just a weird question, but it seems like in most cases it would still seem moral to me.
I mean, the fetus is still being killed, so yes, I still consider it immoral.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So with $5 super chat, you didn't say anything, Mike, but thank you for your super chat. Thank you for contributing to MDD. So the next one under that is Radamus Odd for $5. Thank you for your super chat. How about we substitute the violinist you wake up attached to when your son or daughter? Still think it would be easy to just attach Tjump?
What was the question?
So he says,
basically, if it was your son or daughter instead of just some stranger.
I would be more likely to detach if that was the case.
So
there's Tjump.
So you're saying I'm attached to my wife right now?
Hey! I think Thanos was a great moral character. I think
he just wanted to bring balance to the universe. I mean, what's so wrong about that, right?
You got to read his backstory. He killed all of his children because he started with them because he wanted to be the hero. He's like, you know what? If I'm going to do it to everybody else, got to do it to me first.
This conversation just took a super dark turn.
Yeah. We'll go with Mary Hull for $5. She's coming at you, Skylar. Skylar Fiction, to be consistent, are you also in favor of mandatory donation for people who are clinically dead?
Oh, that's a good question.
I would, yes, definitely.
Yeah, I feel like I could be convinced of that. It doesn't seem too out of my, even though I have this weird like fear that somehow I'm going to come back to life one day and now my organs, I won't have them. And then whatever I do, but I guess like if they could bring me back to life, they could probably fix the organ issue. So yeah, I guess I would do that. It seems fair.
Well, that concludes the super chats. But we have two questions from Samuel Little J. Home. Here's the question, so you guys can respond to this if you want. How is it that letting yourself be stabbed more moral to let yourself die, if that other may go on to wrongfully kill others?
So if someone's coming to attack you with a knife, the moral thing to do would be the Jainist absolute nonviolence, the Jesus turn your other cheek thing. It would be more moral to not harm them and just to take the moral high ground and to accept that they're going to harm you rather than to harm them back. What they do in the future isn't your fault. So you wouldn't be held responsible, or you wouldn't be immoral to not kill them if they're going to kill more people in the future. That would be contradictory. So the moral thing to do would be to turn the other cheek, or to let them hurt you and just take the absolute nonviolence route of, I'm not going to harm you no matter what. That is the moral extreme.
And Skylar, Katie, want to respond to that?
Nah, got nothing.
No.
Well, that concludes tonight's show, everyone. It was very entertaining. A lot of fun. Do you guys have a concluding remark before we go here? Do you guys want to promote your anything else going on later, like an after show or anything like that?
I like Skylar's new mustache. It's nice.
Yeah, I'm appreciating the mustache.
It's where the power is now, folks. It's where the power is. So,
I had to get something to compete with the chair. I mean, come on.
yes, I was like, well, my goal for yesterday for the tournament was to distract all of you with my mustache. Like to come in and just throw you off your game. Like I can't stare at Skylar while I argue with him with this ridiculous mustache on him. But it is literally growing on me. But I is actually like I'm really actually starting to like it weirdly, and I don't know if I should. I don't know if I should live this life with a mustache. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, this was great. I had a lot of fun. Thank you, everyone. This made it a fun debate, and it was incredible.
Yeah, I just want to kind of second that by saying that this is my, I think, 5th debate, and all the 4 previous have been somewhat of dumpster fires, and this was ridiculously cordial, and I absolutely loved it. I didn't even have to shout at anybody. It was delightful. So yeah, thank you to everybody who's here.
Yeah, I don't do blood sport type debates regarding abortion. I don't think that it's a conversation worth having if you're at the point where you're yelling at your opponent. I'd rather have I never say that I'm having an abortion debate. I say I'm having a conversation with people that I disagree with on abortion, because this is a conversation that's incredibly complex, and there's a lot of middle ground for people to meet on, and you can't do that if you're yelling at each other.
Well said. So if we would push everyone to like and subscribe, and push on that alert box. So make sure you hit every stream we have. We have a lot of upcoming awesome debates coming up. So with that, we thank our interlocutors again for participating in tonight's debate, and we're going to call it a night.